Tom Felton adjusted the microphone, clipped to his jacket as he waited behind the curtain of a late-night television studio. The audience on the other side applauded while the host finished introducing the next segment. It had been a busy year for Tom. He had been promoting a new independent film, visiting charities, and reconnecting with fans around the world. Tonight's appearance was supposed to be another relaxed conversation, filled with laughter, memories, and stories from his career. The stage manager smiled and gave him a thumbs up. "You're on in 5. Tom smiled politely, took a deep breath, and walked onto the brightly lit stage as the audience erupted into cheers. Jimmy Fallon greeted him warmly with a handshake and invited him to sit down. The first few minutes went exactly as expected. They joked about traveling, filming, and funny moments from movie sets. The audience laughed often and everything seemed comfortable. Then Jimmy glanced at a cue card with a playful grin. "So, Tom," he said, "people always wonder whether you're tired of hearing about that famous wizarding series." The audience laughed. Tom smiled. "I'll never get tired of it. Those films changed my life and I'm grateful every single day." Jimmy nodded, but instead of moving on, he continued asking similar questions. Each one circled back to the same topic. "What was your favorite prank? Who forgot the most lines? Do fans still call you by your character's name?" Tom answered patiently, but after several minutes, he gently tried to steer the conversation toward his new movie. "I'd actually love to tell everyone about the project. I've been working on these last 2 years." Jimmy interrupted with another joke about Tom's famous character before the actor could continue. The audience laughed again, but this time Tom's smile became noticeably smaller. He wasn't offended. He simply wanted people to know there was more to his career than one role from many years ago. Jimmy noticed the change in Tom's expression but assumed it was part of the friendly banter. "So," Jimmy joked again, "if someone walked in here with a magic wand, would you know what to do?" The audience laughed loudly. Tom looked around the studio for a brief moment before replying. "I think I'd probably ask them if they'd like to hear about my new film instead." Some audience members laughed. Others applauded. Jimmy smiled awkwardly. He realized Tom was trying to move the conversation in a different direction. Instead of changing topics immediately, Jimmy jokingly said, "Come on, everyone loves the old stories." Tom leaned slightly forward. "They do, and so do I, but actors grow. Every artist hopes people will also care about the work they're creating today." The studio suddenly became much quieter. Jimmy hadn't expected such a serious answer. The producers behind the cameras exchanged quick glances. Jimmy attempted another joke to lighten the mood. "So are you saying we should pretend those movies never happened?" Tom shook his head calmly. "Not at all. I'm saying they were one beautiful chapter, not the entire book." The audience applauded warmly. The conversation had become more thoughtful than anyone expected. One producer signaled for the show to speed things up because the timing of the segment was slipping. Jimmy looked toward another cue card. Instead of asking about Tom's latest project, the next prepared question again referenced his famous character. Tom gave a small sigh. "I think we've talked about that enough." There was an uncomfortable silence. Jimmy laughed nervously. "Oh, are we getting kicked out already?" Tom smiled politely but stood from his chair. "I don't want anyone to misunderstand. I'm grateful for everything that's happened in my career, but I also believe every guest deserves a chance to talk about what brought them here today." The audience became completely silent. Some people nodded. Others started clapping. The producers quickly walked toward the stage during the commercial break. One staff member quietly suggested ending the interview early to stay on schedule. Jimmy looked surprised. He hadn't intended for the conversation to reach this point. Tom calmly thanked the audience and stepped backstage, while the cameras cut to commercials. Within minutes, social media exploded with claims that Tom Felton had been kicked off the show after a heated clash. Short video clips spread rapidly without the full context. Some posts claimed the two stars had argued. Others insisted Tom had stormed away in anger. Neither version was accurate. Backstage, Jimmy walked directly to Tom's dressing room. He knocked gently. "Can we talk?" Tom opened the door. "Of course." Jimmy entered with an apologetic smile. "I think I got carried away trying to entertain the audience." Tom nodded. "I know, I wasn't upset. I just wanted one chance to speak about the project that's closest to my heart." Jimmy looked genuinely disappointed in himself. You were right. They spent nearly 20 minutes talking privately. Tom explained how many actors spend years building new careers but often find interviews returning to the same old subjects. Jimmy admitted that television sometimes relies too heavily on nostalgia because producers know audiences enjoy familiar memories. By the end of the conversation, both men were smiling again. Jimmy had an idea. What if we fix this? The following week, Tom returned for a special extended interview. This time, there were no rushed cue cards, no repeated questions. Jimmy opened the conversation differently. Tonight isn't about looking backward. Tonight, we're celebrating where Tom Felton is today. The audience applauded enthusiastically. For nearly 30 minutes, Tom spoke about filmmaking, music, charity work, mental health awareness, and the lessons he had learned throughout his career. The interview became one of the most talked-about conversations of the season. Viewers praised both men. Many appreciated that Jimmy acknowledged the earlier misunderstanding instead of ignoring it. Others admired Tom for expressing his feelings respectfully without raising his voice. Months later, Tom reflected on the experience during another interview. He smiled and said, "Sometimes people hear only the loudest headline, instead of the quiet conversation that follows." Jimmy later joked during his monologue, "I learned something important. If a guest comes to promote a new project, maybe let them actually promote it." The audience laughed. The story eventually became less about an argument and more about communication. People who had believed the dramatic headlines discovered that the real situation was far calmer than social media suggested. Tom and Jimmy continued to respect one another, proving that honest conversations can solve misunderstandings better than angry reactions ever could. The experience reminded millions of viewers that headlines often exaggerate conflict, while patience, listening, and mutual respect create much better endings than sensational rumors. That simple lesson became far more memorable than any fictional clash ever could.